Hello and welcome to the Diamond High Performance Podcast. I am joined by Head of Performance here at Diamond, Corban Wroe.
And then,
Mate, today we're talking about getting old. Today we're talking about aging and our longevity program. And this is one that I have been bashing on to everyone about for probably at least 3, if not 4 years, because I'm getting old. And as I have progressed into my 40s, it's become a factor for me that I really want to try and maintain my current level of performance for as long as possible. And I've got to be honest, it's a bit scary when you start to see things decline.
yes, I tell people all the time I'm an old Land Cruiser, so it's about the mileage, not an old Land Cruiser. I'm just a Land Cruiser with a lot of miles on it, and it's starting to come front of mind for me as well. So, hence, I'm a big sporter now.
Yes, well, and you're still a young pup. How old are you now, Corbs?
I'll be 33.
Oh, mate,
September.
baby, you got I've nearly got a decade on you. So
About the mileage.
Well, and so I think it's a really important one. Again, is we always tackle things from the perspective of performance. Now, you don't have to be an athlete, or you don't have to consider yourself an athlete. We might consider you an athlete, but it's all about improving your performance here at Diamond. And so I just think it's an important one to touch on because I think it's probably an element for people that they've almost accept that they're going to get old, and that it's gonna and that their performance is going to decline over time. And I think there's probably starting to become a bit of pushback from my generation around just accepting that I'm going to get old and I'm going to be able to not do things that I used to be able to do. I think we have, life has pushed along a little bit more. We're probably not having families as early as what we used to do, and life takes a little bit longer to happen. So we want to maintain through our 50s and 60s and on as much as we possibly can without just kind of going, I've got old.
Yeah, and that's the old way of thinking. We're living longer, but so that's our lifespan. But what we're talking about is, okay, what's our health span though? So you might live to 90, but are those last 20, 30 years any good? So it's about improving or maintaining our health span, which is very much related to our strength span. So how strong are you is going to directly affect how well you live in those later years. And it's kind of, it is funny to see the shift because we all used to think of that, as you get old, you do just kind of drop off, and that's just the way it is. But now we're seeing more and more, like there's so many fit and healthy elderly people that are doing things. And I remember it used to be like those things you'd see on like the 7 o'clock or the 6 o'clock news, like 9-year-old lifts weights in the gym, and like it was like this massive, like, oh, it's so wild. And now it's like, no, that's what it should be. Like the reason she's fit and healthy at 90 is because she's probably been doing it since she was 30. She didn't just go, I'm done, I'm just going to sit on the couch.
60 years of strength conditioning will help.
Yep. That's and I think I actually even saw something, one of my friends was posting something about how if you go out, or if say you're like, I'm not going out this weekend, I'm going to hit the gym in the morning, it's kind of shunned, it's frowned upon. I think that's the cool movement that's changing. Like, no, it is important to take care of your body, and it's not a niche thing to go to the gym and to look after yourself anymore, whereas it used to be.
Yep.
And that's probably why possibly the generation before who didn't value strength and conditioning, that's possibly why it was a bit of a niche-y thing. Now it's, no, this is the standard. Like, you have to be doing this if you want to have quality of life later on.
Well, and it's really interesting. I think the generation, the young generation now, sort of in their, early 20s, is probably got a far better outlook on things. Like they drink far less alcohol, they eat far more healthily. And I saw this run club. So I live near Lake Munga, and I was walking around, and there was this group of like 20 dudes that were like, they were walking down to go and run, and they look like they should be going out in Northbridge. Like they're all young, like, you know, the half sleeve, the like, you know, ear, like, and I was like looking at them, they look like a bit of a rabble, and I'm like, you know, years gone by, they'd be walking to the pub to go and, you know, get stuck in. And this is probably, I don't know, 5 o'clock at night or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, they're going to go have 25 pints before they, you know, stumble home. These guys are rocking up to the park to run. And I just thought that was really, really cool. And I think that's a really impressive thing to see. And I think that means that the next generation of people coming through are going to live healthier and longer than ever, because of the you know, the attitudes they have towards looking after their bodies. The thing is, though, is there's also been that, you know, there's that aging. So I say anyone 35 plus that's not still, you know, competing at a high level and already doing all this sort of stuff, but like 35 plus is where it starts to happen, because you've generally, even if you've been really sporty or really active, you do that all through high school. You get out of high school, you go to uni, you get a job, whatever it might be. Then you become career and family focused, and by the time you get to 35, you might have not had a focus on your health and fitness for 5+ years. And 5+ years is a long time for things to start to get out of whack. And that definitely happened to me. I got out of professional baseball. I became very focused about what my next career was going to be, how I was going to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And I'm on the record as saying, I hate the gym. I would never go to the gym. And why wouldn't you just play a sport instead of going to the gym, right? And the reason, and I can tell you this now with some experience, I can answer my own question, is that you can't do it because you get hurt.
Yep.
Because every time you go and try and play basketball, or you try and play a sport that you love, you pop a calf, or you do a hammy, or you do some sort of injury because your body's not conditioned, because it's been deconditioned sitting in a chair working all day. So when I always talk about longevity, you don't have to be 50, 60, 70, 35 plus, currently not physically looking after yourself. That's where this type of focus kicks in. So then what should we actually be doing, Corbs?
So, I mean, it's very somewhat simple.
Well, in fact, before we jump into that, why don't we talk about what the body's doing? So why is it declining? What's actually happening?
So I guess the technical term is sarcopenia, which is just decline of muscle mass and strength as you get older. It's just the way the body's designed. Anything that ages, it loses things.
Like the old Land Cruiser?
Yeah, loses functionality at a particular rate. So sarcopenia is one of the biggest things to try and halt. So by doing strength training, there's certain periods in life where the rate that it can improve is better. So obviously in our teens and our 20s, that's our money period. So that is the time, I like to say, to put the most money in the bank, because pretty much after the age of 30, you are in a uphill battle trying to fight against Father Time. So teen years, 20s, we put as much strength, as much fitness as we can, and then we try and maintain that. It's not to say you can't improve.
Well, and I can vouch for that, because I definitely improved. I was in far better shape at 39 than I was at 33.
Yeah, for sure. It's almost like the better way to talk is if you did what you're doing now in your 20s.
Game changer.
Yeah, you'd be crazy. So that's what's kind of, I guess, the basic terms of what's happening. So we've got that decline, and so we're trying to halt it as best we can. But one of the biggest things is that doesn't get talked about is the loss of power. So the ability for us to do things rapidly or to exert force really fast is what gets lost. So hate using stats, but the stats are, I think, over a 3-year period after our 30s, it's we can lose about 3 to 4% muscle mass, 5 to 6% strength, but 11% power. And so if you think about that if that's in 3 years, so from your 30s to your 40s, if you kind of get hunkered down with family, work, you've lost almost a third of your power just in that 10-year period. And power is the hardest thing to get back. And that power is the biggest thing that's related to someone being independent as they get older. So, we having the strength is important to get up and down out of the chair. But having the power is the ability to be able to catch yourself if you trip or you stumble, to kind of react rapidly and I guess just walk normally. So that's one of those things where we need the strength, but we also need the functionality of that strength, which is power.
So let's stay on that power thing for a little bit. So as an athlete, what does power look like? Like how do we know we've got good power as an athlete? And then we'll walk it back.
Yeah, I mean, so power is force times velocity. So are you strong and can you do it quick? So bodybuilders are really, really strong, but they probably lack a bit of power. So for an athlete, that explosiveness, so being able to jump, sprint, those are probably the easiest things to be able to, throw a med ball and exert force in a really rapid movement. That's you can just see an athlete when they move, like that's a powerful athlete because they're doing something athletic and explosively that's maybe the average person's not going to do.
And so in our youth athletes, we're generally talking the other way. They've generally got significant amount of power because you develop power at a higher rate. Just like we lose it at a higher rate at the back end, we develop it more quickly than we develop strength when we're younger. So generally for our youth athletes, we're trying to close that gap and get them stronger to handle the power they can produce. So basically, like if you've got a really powerful engine, we're trying to
put the brakes on.
Well, or even just trying to improve the drive line so it can handle all the force that's being produced. So that's cool. As we get to the other side, the strength stays, but the power declines. So it stops us having the ability to be able to get up out of our chair, or stops us from being able to jump or run, or even just, I mean, you were talking about it before, even just toe off when we're walking.
Yeah, and that's like, I think you think about all the funny things we hear, and dad strength, like heaps of dads are strong. They just maintain that strength a lot easier. But if you see all the funny videos of the dads having the 100-meter race at the cookout or the birthday party, and they all pull a hammy, and because they just don't have that, they don't have the functionality or capacity to handle force in a rapid fashion or something explosive. They don't have that ability anymore. They've lost it, and that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, they're still strong, but they've declined. They haven't done anything powerful for a while, so they're losing the functionality aspect. So that's one of the important things where I see a lot of people, as they age, especially males, they might do strength training and they maintain, mostly for looks, they maintain the strength, but they still kind of lose the ability to move and I guess get up and down with the kids and still play. They like, I can't do that anymore. And so what we want to do with our longevity training is try and halt that and then somewhat improve it for as long as we can.
Yep. So we're talking a bit of speed, power, agility type stuff. That's so if we group that into one bucket, so we've got speed, power, agility as one thing that's an important factor. Obviously, the decline of strength would be the next one that we need to focus on. And so that, while we can stay strong for a period of time, particularly in females, that's where that decline can be really rapid as well, particularly upper body strength.
Yeah. So another cool stat, I think it was for men, unfortunately, but if a man could do 40 or more push-ups versus someone who could do 10 or less, they had a 95% less chance of dying of cardiovascular related events, which is like, so basically if you can bang out 40 push-ups, and we kind of, sometimes when we say things like that, you go, oh, it must be the push-ups. And if you just think about it, someone who can do 40 push-ups is probably fit, right? And that's the biggest,
it's the correlation rather than the act itself.
Yeah, some of the people, you say that, people go, oh, I'm just going to do push-ups. But it's just thinking about, general fitness and, the other thing related to to power and for females is, or males, sorry, but, falls, hip fractures. Once you have a hip, one of the biggest things with our elderly clients is balance and trying to keep their strength so that they can kind of catch themselves and walk up the stairs and control themselves, but so they don't fall. Because once you have a hip fracture, I think it's over the age of 50 or 60, I think if you smoke, you have I forget what it's called, you have a 2 times rate of all-cause mortality. If you have a hip fracture at the same age, you have a 3 times higher rate of all-cause mortality. So you're better off being a smoker than having a hip fracture when you're over the age of 50 or 60. So what's the most important thing? Don't have a hip fracture. So don't fall. How do you not fall? We maintain strength, maintain power. So one of the biggest things with that is also bone density, which with our power training, we do plyometric work. So everyone thinks plyometrics, athlete, crazy, box jumps and bounds. And it's not that we don't do box jumps and bounds, but we just tone it down to the level of our client. So we used to do it ourselves for our 70 to 80-year-olds. We kind of babied them a little bit. We're like, oh, no, they're not. No pogos, no box jumps for them. That's dangerous. And we were robbing them of something really, really valuable. So now you walk into the gym when our golden girls come in and they are doing a very, very similar program to what you might see maybe our youth athletes do. They're possibly doing it a little bit slower, but as long as they're trying to do it as fast and as powerful as they possibly can, they're going to get that benefit. So with the landings, the plyometrics, they're getting that impact, which is going to increase, or possibly not increase at that age, but maintain their bone density levels, which is going to improve their rate of not having a hip fracture if they do fall. One of our clients has fallen. She didn't have a fracture, and that's not saying that's the reason, but anyone else who hadn't been doing that type of training, possibly that was a fracture waiting to happen. And then the other aspect, med ball throws. So just the ability, you kind of focus on the throwing aspect up top, but if you look down the bottom, that's that toe off when they walk. You see a lot of elderly people, they shuffle when they walk, and it's because they don't have the functionality, as you said, to powerfully toe off and walk. And that's one of the biggest things why power training is so important, because the decline is just so rapid, but the power is what's going to keep that functionality, going to keep that independence. The strength needs to be there to kind of be a foundation for the power. So that's obviously important, number one. But yeah, I think a lot of people miss the power side of things. We certainly did in our earlier years of this, but now it's a massive part of our training program for them.
And then finally, probably the next big bucket of the 3 is then endurance.
Yes, VO2 max is the buzzword, which I will go on the record to say, unless you do a proper VO2 max test where you go into a lab and put the mask on, it's probably not VO2 max.
I literally had this conversation with one of our longevity clients yesterday, Dom, who's like, oh, how do I measure VO2 max? I'm like, mate, you don't want to go do a VO2 max test. And he's a super intelligent guy. And we had the conversation that if your endurance is increasing, then we can assume that your VO2 max is increasing. And so unless you specifically want the number and you're willing to put yourself through what a VO2 max test actually is.
Yeah. And it's just, again, it's in the word endurance. Are we improving endurance? Are we improving the functionality of the heart and the cardiovascular system to pump blood and efficiently use oxygen and all that? At the end of the day, I think if people get too caught up in, I need to improve my VO2 max to this level, it's like, well, you're just in trouble. And, you can, again, chuck out more stats. I think it's like a 15%. Every time your VO2 max goes up 5 millimoles or whatever the term they use is, it's 15% either way. So 15% higher risk of all-cause mortality or 15% lower. So at the end of the day, if you just get fitter or better endurance, you are going to have that benefit or have that decreased risk on your side, in your favor. But the simplest way, and it's great, we see a lot of people do it. For every 1,000 steps extra a day, it's the same thing. I feel like 15% is the stat they use for everything. But it's the common theme here is the more you do of this, the less chance you have of this is probably the term to take away. So lots and lots of people go for walks, and it's great. So that's kind of that bare minimum. We still need to expose our heart and our cardiovascular system to those kind of higher exerted effort, vigorous efforts would be the term, because we want to expose it to that top end. Because I think that's something that gets missed is lots and lots of people go for walks and that. There comes a time where their heart rate might never go above 150 unless something bad's happening. They're like something, that's not good. And it's like, we actually want to expose them to an elevated heart rate. So I think that's an important part of our program too, is we add elements of conditioning. What are we trying to do? Improve VO2 max, improve endurance. But we're also just trying to expose them to a higher level or get them to exert themselves at a higher level than what they normally might do. So for our oldies, if they come in 3 times a week, that's the only 3 times in an entire week that they're doing vigorous exercise. So it's one of those things where it's like, it should be somewhat hard within reason. Like we obviously tailor it to the person. Day one, we don't want someone to pass out and or not come back because that was the hardest thing ever. We build them up. But I think that the biggest thing I've taken away is not being afraid or not underestimating possibly what you can do at an older age. And I think a lot of people still underestimate what's okay. Like when we see it all the time, we say like, oh, look, our 80-year-olds, they do this. Really? Like, is that safe? And it's like, yes, it is. If they've prepared for it and if they've been training for it, it is.
I was going to say it's safe when you've been doing it for 5 years.
Yep.
When you've built up to it for over 5 years. So I think that's important factor as well, because I think there's a few factors that are also. So we've outlined the reasons why. We've talked about how the body degrades over time and all that sort of stuff. And there's probably people listening going, yep, I should probably, the amount of people that I have a conversation, I should. Oh yeah, but, right? Like I'm not an athlete. I can't come to your gym, or I don't like gyms, or I've never been, or I can't even get started. I'm so far gone, right? So there's a few things. One is that an athlete's gym is the best gym to be in, because athletes aren't generally good in the gym. So if you go to CrossFit facility, if you go to a big box gym, there's some people there, that's all they do, and they're really elite in the gym.
Yeah.
Athletes, as a general rule, really good at their sport, only okay in the gym. Some of them are elite, of course.
They're doing it as a means to an end. I'm doing this for my sport.
Exactly. It's a supplement to their sport. So there's a lot of, bad movements, lots of learning, lots of beginners, lots of people that are just as uncertain. Athletes are just as uncertain out of their sport and in the gym as everyone else. So there's this misconception that athletes love being in the gym, they're really good at it. I'm still not good, and I hated it when I was an athlete. It was my least favorite thing. I was tall, gangly, baby giraffe, very weak. Super embarrassed to be in the gym all the time. And so because of that, and I was in the waist gym, which, I was trying to do pull-ups next door to Emma George at the time, who was the world record holder for pole vault. And she's doing pull-ups with, half her body weight strapped to her, and I can barely do 3 body weight pull-ups, and it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
And so I was young and didn't really understand that sometimes it's hard and you've just got to persevere and lots of learning from that side of things. But the reality is that, it's you've got to start somewhere, and it's okay to start this program with 0 foundation, because if you don't start now, you're actually only speeding up this process.
Yeah, and I think that's what people think. It's like, it's too late, and it's just not. You can literally, again, we talk about maintain what you got. So you're declining, but you're just going to keep declining.
You're actually speeding it up by not doing it. So like you're not going to be like, oh, this is my natural rate. And I'll just no. You're hurtling towards mortality, right?
Yeah.
That's the way. That's the best way to consider it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, and I'm talking 35 plus.
Yeah.
If you're doing nothing, you are hurtling towards mortality.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you get started, right, and we've had some great examples like. Shout out to Dave Lakey. You know, like he's a guy that had never really been in the gym, had some questionable habits as far as, you know, his general lifestyle had occurred, got a couple of memos from his doctor, drew a line in the sand, and he has been an absolute one breath of fresh air for us as far as inspirational and just motivation and dedication. But also he's changed his life.
Yeah. Well, he's changed the trajectory without a doubt.
I mean, and I don't even know what the percentage would be, but it is. I mean, it's a 180-degree change of intent.
Yeah.
Right, and that is phenomenal in itself. And then you know Craig Sorpold, who's our MVP, and he's 36, I think.
Yeah.
And he was on a spiral as well. And I won't go into all his personal health information. This is not the time and the place for it. But has literally turned everything back around to where he's on zero medications.
Yeah.
He's on, and not only is he on zero medications, he's our strongest athlete in the gym.
Yeah.
So he's gone from being, you know, nowhere to one of our best athletes, and he's back playing sport, and he's back doing things he never thought he could do. And so I think that we have got millions of examples of why getting started now makes a difference than trying to wait.
Yeah, and it's again, as we said, changing the trajectory of the the health span. Sorry, but I think that probably leads to another point that it's also not underplaying. Like it is hard to get started because you do think you're like, oh, I'm just so out of shape, I've lost it, and that. So it is really intimidating. We get it, but. Which also brings up another, you know, we talked about the sarcopenia before, but then sarcopenia, actually, there's a thing called sarcopenia obesity. And so what that is because we lose muscle and we lose strength, we then become less active. We then have a positive energy balance, which just means we eat more than we kind of lose or burn. So then we kind of get obese or put on a little bit more fat. And then we lose a bit more muscle mass, and then we do less, and it's this vicious cycle, and it's what causes people to be a little bit overweight as they get older, but also be a lot more weaker as they get older. And it puts you in this terrible place where you are afraid to get started because I just can't believe like where I'm at. But I think, you know, Dave is the best example of people, what's the quote you always say? Well, you underestimate what you can do. Underestimate
what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade.
Overestimate what you can do.
Sorry. So that's the one. Start again. So so you overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing for the longevity program is you can be in a really bad spot at, let's say, 40, 42, and you're like, I'm too afraid to get started because of how far off I am. But it's like, well, if you think what you can achieve by the time you're 50 and how good a spot you can be in versus you might not be in the best spot next year, but you're working towards it versus if you don't do anything, I can guarantee you're going to be in a bad spot at 50. And I think that's the biggest motive or should be the biggest motivator for people who are maybe a little bit concerned or afraid to get started. Like that's what we do. We tailor programs to the person as far as what's your level, where are you at. So me and you can be on the exact same program, but for your level, okay, you're only doing this amount of weight or this amount of sets, whereas this person's doing much, much more, but it's because they're exactly where you were a year ago. And I think that's the biggest thing. It is you against you, and it's the whole point of this is if you picture yourself when you're older, do you want to be independent or do you want to be asking your kids to hey, I need you to look after me. I need you to wheel me around. I need you to consider if you're going to put me in a home or not. Like it's, and I think I don't know a person that would answer the latter. So you need to be doing this stuff for that reason, and that's the coolest thing we see with our, and especially with your mum Trishy. That's the reason she does it. She hates it. She doesn't want to be in there. But
she's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah. She loves it when I'm in. But why is she doing it? She wants to be functional and play with the grandkids. Like that is the motivator. So it's like, you don't have to love the gym. I don't love the gym, but I do it because I know I do not want to see any more decline. I don't want to go backwards. I know how important this is to put me in a good position later in life. So I think sometimes people are a bit scared of either where they're at and getting started, or they're like, I just don't like the gym. Like, that's okay. You still need to do this. This is important.
Well, I think there's a couple of important factors there. I mean, one, if you're listening to this and you're thinking of someone as you're hearing this, support them in getting started. And that's whether that's with us or with someone else, but support them to get started, because I think everyone has someone that they might be worried about or they know is on a bad path, and they probably need someone to help drag them along. And so definitely, I cannot underestimate how impactful your support to that person could be. And that might be whether it's financial support, whether that's physical support in just showing up with them and an arm around the shoulder and being supportive of them actually doing things, being their cheerleader, whatever that is going to make a massive difference. So I think that's really important. One of the proudest things that I've been able to do at Diamond is have my parents come into the gym. And as two people that had never done that before, they didn't start in strength and conditioning training until they were in their 60s. And the impact that has made on both of their lives, like you said, mum, is playing with the grandkids still. She's still, there's been almost, touching wood here, zero decline from when she started. So over a 5 or 6 year period, she's probably in better shape than she was prior to, and that's including having a knee replacement in the process. So that a knee replacement, as bigger operation and as bigger a surgery as that was, she cruised through it. Dad, started because he wanted to, continue his competitive sailing as long as possible and stay active as long as possible. And again, not seeing a big decline, including a quadruple heart bypass, right? And we can't predict these things. We're talking about someone that's not overweight, has not a non-drinker, a non-smoker his whole life, just family history, and unfortunately caught the issue before it became, a heart attack or something sinister. But again, he was able to go through that massive surgery without having, drastic fallout or huge recovery time. He was back fighting fit really, really quickly. So you can't predict what's going to happen in the future. And the more resilient your body is, the better chance you have of coming out the other side of those challenges, from a much better part in a much better scenario.
Yeah, and again, if my parents were over in WA, I'd have them in the gym with us too. So I program for them over east, because I said had the same conversation. Like this is important. And I see it in my dad was an Olympic level athlete. That's how good he was for cycling, and he's seen that decline of once he was done, had kids and got a busy job, and to see photos of him when he was competing, and it's holy, that was. And so I don't doubt it's disheartening, but it doesn't mean he can't turn it around and get back in shape so that he can be independent later in his life. That's such an important thing. I think it's also brings up an interesting point about, dragging someone in the gym. Something that can also be thought of is the other way. We always talk about athletes and youth athletes, but kids still need to get in the gym, and kids getting in the gym early actually sets them up to be in the gym later in life and it becoming a normal thing. So we can say, like, if you're thinking of someone like one of your parents or your grandparents who should get in the gym, if you've also got kids who, it doesn't matter if they're elite athletes or anything like that, like just teaching them like, hey, this is part of living a healthy life is doing this type of stuff. Like that's where like we love having families in the gym. Like, our Nat Wincup, our most consistent athlete, is a mother of one of our athletes, and she's a prime example of someone who, instead of just sitting in the car and waiting for their child to finish their session, like she leads by example, and she is the example now, and that's one of the coolest things. And so I think if we can encourage and support parents or families even that, hey, this can be a family thing to, being active and healthy together is a really important and bonding thing. I think that can be a tool. But then there's also something that we haven't touched on, which is the cognitive part. We talked about all the physical stuff that comes with getting in the gym, being stronger, but Alzheimer's, dementia, any cognitive impairment that's starting to pop up more and more. There's no doubt, there's so much research now showing the benefits that it can change the trajectory on that as well, and improve cognitive function, brain volume, all that good stuff. And I think sometimes we do get too focused on, I want to be independent and still have my strength and my power, but we forget the benefits that strength and conditioning has on the brain, and that's one of the worst things I think people can experience is those cognitive impairments with family and as they get older. So if there's any more reason to do it, halting or changing that trajectory. And so I don't know if people know the benefits that the gym can have on that, but it's another significant thing to consider of why you should do it.
Mate, that's such a great point, because my nan had Alzheimer's, and watching her deteriorate from being a brilliant woman to being bedridden, and the degeneration, and it was like looking at a different person, and I'm terrified of that for my dad and for me moving forward. And it's also part of the reason, like if we move forward into like, well, what does a longevity program look like, right? And it's different for everyone. But like for a beginner, what's been really successful for us has been 2 strength sessions and then use of our recovery center as well. So we know that all the health benefits of saunas and ice baths as well. So that's where Dave started, was 2 strength sessions and then 2 sessions in the recovery center. So he'd go and do a 20-minute sauna, a 6-minute ice bath, a 20-minute sauna, a 6-minute ice bath, and that was his workout for the day. Because that's where the capacity he had at the beginning. So all he had to do was come to the gym twice a week, and then sit in a sauna and an ice bath for a couple of hours.
Tough.
And that kicked off such a great habit for him, because it built him a habit of coming in 4 times a week. And now we can't keep him away. And so I think we're building the habit. We at a minimum, we want you 2 times a week for 45 minutes. It doesn't have to be crazy intimidating. It doesn't have to be in busy times. You're fully supported. And we can mix in other things that you enjoy, like sauna or ice bath or whatever it is that you like to do, to try and build those habits and go from there.
Yep. And I think, at the end of the day, what's a program look like? It's mobility. So can we maintain and improve movement functionality? Can you get into certain positions, get up and down? Then power, as we spoke about, the importance of that. Then we go into our strength. And so I think sometimes people are a little bit intimidated or unsure of, what should I do? Every day something gets released. Oh, you should be doing this. You need to do this type of training, this type of training. At the end of the day, the biggest thing that holds people back is just not doing anything. So I'm more than that. When people say like, oh, I do Pilates, awesome. Do it for 10 years, 3 times a week. Then, that'll make me happy. Same with CrossFit, same with anything, high rocks, whatever you want to do. At the end of the day, what's going to get you in a better place? It's being consistent, having good habits. We haven't even touched on the nutrition side of things. That's the next thing to knock off. But I think the most important thing is just how can you start something consistently and maintain? How can you be consistent? So start with twice a week. Just no matter what, I know I'm going to go to the gym on a Monday and a Wednesday, and I'm going to do a recovery session, or I'm going to go for a big walk that I normally wouldn't do on Friday. And you just start with that you are already miles ahead of where you would have been if you don't do anything. Because I think we say it all the time, we just need to get people in the door. We just need to get them started. Once we get them started and we can try get them consistent, it's just like a snowball effect. But the hardest part of this entire journey is just making the decision like, nah, I need to do this. And I think it disheartens me that it's sometimes the reason people don't do it is not they know they should do it. They're just a little bit confused of what should I do, where should I go, and it's tough with all the information out there. But our programming is literally KISS, keep it simple, stupid, and it's literally, it sounds basic, but it helps people be consistent, and it allows us to tailor it to the person, tone it down, tone it up, whatever we need to do, and whatever allows someone to be consistent, we're going to work it in.
Mate, that's a great way to summarize it. So guys, if this has resonated with you, or it's something that you have been maybe putting off or thinking about doing, we'd love you to reach out to us. You can get on our website at diamondhp.com.au, and we have a contact form there that you can throw in some comments, and we'll get back and answer any questions that you might have. It doesn't have to be directly about starting to train with us. It might just be some questions about your particular situation. We'd love to have a chat with you about it. Alternatively, you can jump on our Instagram page, Diamond HP Training, and ask us questions there as well. But we'd love to hear from you, and if we can help in any way, we're more than happy to do so. So thanks again. Hope you took something away from this, and we'll chat to you all again very soon.